Well, I guess we're live. Good morning from the United States Sports Academy in Daphne, Alabama. This is Wednesday morning. It's 11:30 Central Time, and it's time for the United States Sports Academy's Sports Talk Hangout. I'm Dr. Arthur Ogden. I'm your moderator, and each Wednesday morning at this time, we discuss various issues that face the world of sport. Our panel today, to my right, is Dr. Tim Foley, the Dean of Students at the United States Sports Academy. To my left is Dr. Fred Cromartie, Director of Doctoral Studies. And the issue that we're going to talk about today is the NFL is facing another lawsuit. Former players are suing the NFL over giving them painkillers illegally, masking injuries, not telling them about it, causing many of them to be seriously injured and even addicted. Now, it's as if the gentleman says the NFL didn't have enough to worry about right now with the concussion case that they face, and of course they came to something like a $725 million settlement. But a federal judge in Philadelphia said, no, I'm going to take this under review, so it's really not settled. That federal judge did not think that there was enough money, and which brings up questions about the effectiveness of the NFL Players Association. But last Tuesday, 8 former NFL players filed a lawsuit in San Francisco, charging that the NFL teams knowingly gave players a variety of painkillers, uppers, downers, cocktails of medicine, and injections, among other prescription medicines, gave them to them illegally to keep those players on the field. Now, the 8 players, who also represent yet another 600 of them, are Richard Dent, Jim McMahon, Jeremy Newberry, Roy Green, J.D. Hill, Keith Van Horn, Ron Stone, and Ron Pritchard. They're represented by the Baltimore firm of Silverman, Thompson, Slutkin, and White. Same firm, by the way, who represents the NHL Players Association in their concussion-related lawsuit. Now, mentioned before that this could become a class action suit. Whether or not the judge determines it will be a class action suit is based upon a number of issues. But if it is, that will cover at least 600 players who played between 1968 and 2008. That's 40 years. And every one of the plaintiffs claims to have been plied with the painkillers, the sleeping pills, and the like. They were never informed of injuries they had sustained. Jim McMahon says he did not know until years later that he had a broken neck and kept on playing, for the Chicago Bears, and that he had 2 broken ankles, kept on playing. I took time to read the 85-page suit, and every one of the instances follows the same kind of pattern. The players were obviously too fearful, not intimidated, but they were too fearful of not being given an opportunity to play if they refused taking the medication, or if they didn't, quote, man up. We were talking offline, and Dr. Cromartie said, well, it was just you man up. You go ahead and play with a bone protruding from your arm or something like that, because it was expected of you. So they took their pain pills. There are all kinds of tales about what would happen after a game when they would get some pain pills and so forth. So we move to some of these questions, gentlemen. I'm going to toss it up, whoever takes it first. The players in the NFL both seem to be moving toward this very slowly for 2 reasons. First of all, obviously, it's a nightmare. It's a PR nightmare for the NFL. They've already got enough difficulty with the concussions. But second of all, the NFL Players Association seems to bear some culpability here, since it negotiated the terms of the drug treatment. And this is one of the reasons that it's been moving so slowly. I was reading a sport law expert, and he said, look, the defense that the NFL is going to have, they're going to come back and say, look, this was the conditions under which your collective, your CBA, agreed to deal with this. So, how do we see this thing playing out?
Well, it goes back to disclosure. Even though the league itself and the Players Association negotiated these kinds of things, the fact of the matter is that when you are dealing with the team doctors that represent the teams, okay, it should be fair and impartial, so to speak. The doctors should be there to represent both the players as well as the team. But we have seen this play out already. We know for a fact that dealing with concussions and other serious injuries, we've had team doctors that were in the pockets of the NFL team. So they said there was nothing wrong with these players in terms of concussions. Go ahead on and play. That would be the same thing that's coming out right now in terms of these injuries. We can go all the way back to the 60s, like you said. It was well known then that the Chargers, San Diego Chargers, they dispensed steroids to their players. They didn't tell them what they were giving them. They told them to take these pills and go out and play and everything like that. So why now would it be any different with medications? Why now would it be different than with cortisone shots and that? We're going to do the same thing that we possibly can because we want the best product on the field at the time. And that's the way it's playing out. Now, am I absolving the players from all this? No. But collectively, the vast majority of these players really didn't have any understanding. They thought that the NFL Players Association was negotiating in good faith on their behalf. They don't ask any questions. You had a handful of players or a few players that did say certain things. What happened to those players? We all remember the movie Varsity Blues, right? Remember when the running back hurt his knee? They were going to give him the shot at the halftime? What did the star quarterback come in there and say?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. It's not going to do anything for you. It's going to ruin you. And the coach was mad at him for that. And this is the same thing that's playing out right now. Unfortunately, we've had a 40-year history where a lot of this stuff just was hush-hush, pump them full of the medications, let it go. Now we're starting to see the repercussions behind it. But it all stems from the fact that it's not just concussions, it's players from yesteryear that come back that had dementia.
Yeah. Now we'll move on to some more of the drugs. Did you encounter anything like this in Major League Baseball?
Yes. I even encountered something like this for myself where, I had some tendonitis, I took some stuff, and it caused an ulcer. So I had to take a trip to the emergency room. But like Dr. Cromartie said, we don't want to, the public, we know about the locker room culture. At that level, you have to do what you need to do to get on the field, because if you don't, you won't have a career, you don't get paid. And it is a man up. You're going to be out of the locker room if you don't do what you need to do to get on the field.
There's always someone behind you that is willing to take your place, and they will do whatever it takes. And that's why it's sacrifice.
It is.
And you sacrifice.
And so who's there to protect the players? Let me read you a quotation from Dr. Matthew Mateva, who's president of the NFL Physicians Society Task Force and the St. Louis Rams team doctor. He says, and this is Dr. Mateva, as the president of the NFL Physicians Society, I'm surprised by the lawsuit. As an NFL team doctor for the past 14 years, I have seen firsthand the outstanding medical care the team doctors provide to players on and off the field. I will leave it to others to respond to the specific allegations of the lawsuit, but as doctors, we put our players first. Now, I want to bring to mind two things, and I mentioned this in some of my notes. More recently, there was a film called On Any Given Sunday, and there was a doctor played by James Wood who really, he was a pill dispenser. And then I mentioned in some of my notes here, many of you may recall the movie in 1979, North Dallas 40. That was based on the book written by Peter Gent, who played for the Dallas Cowboys from 1964 to 68. Peter Gent died in 2011 at the age of 69 from pulmonary disease. But they made the point about this indiscriminate distribution of drugs. It could be that we did not know what was going on then. We didn't know all the ill effects. The bottom line is, somewhere along the line, somebody didn't take care of the players. Whose responsibility is it, guys? Is it the team? Is it the Players Association? Are the players supposed to be taking care of themselves or taking care of each other? Dr. Camardi says, look, there's always somebody behind you to take your position. How do we resolve this issue? Because it is a significant issue.
Well, again, it goes back to the very thing that you started out with. This is a PR nightmare. And not only are we relying on movies for information, but let's rely on the league for this detailed information in that. You had the one doctor that is in charge of the society right now. He comes out and says, "Hey, let's let this play out, see what happens." Mm-hmm. Well, we do recall several years back, the doctor for the Oakland Raiders stepped down. Why? Because the Oakland Raiders would not take his expertise, medical advice, in regards to players playing or not playing. And then they wanted him to give them a shot, continue with giving them the medication and the pills, and that doctor said unequivocally no. And he left. And he had been the team doctor for the Oakland Raiders for a good number of years. So now when you talk about the big picture and looking at everything, you've got this one medical doctor who is specifically for the team saying, I was looking out for the players. That's why I stepped away. But, again, not only for the players, there's always somebody in the woodwork who's willing to step in for the team doctors.
Yeah, they've all got that. Let me ask two couple of questions because we're running short on time. I know we could go talk for 2 hours on this. There are players who've come out and said, look, we knew what we were getting into. And I forget his name, but he was on the radio the other day and he said, look, I'm 48, I've had both hips replaced, I've had shoulder surgery. I wouldn't have traded a day for it whatsoever. What about them? And on the other hand, is this really just some more lawyers who are making these claims because they're avaricious and they know that even if it settles, they're going to make a bundle? What do we say, guys?
Well, I think in terms of the issue of raising of quality of life, the one player saying I wouldn't have given it up for anything, you do have a handful of players that have said enough's enough. I want to get out now while I'm still in good shape and I want to have a better quality of life. So I think that's a judgment call by each individual player and athlete in that, okay? Now, when it comes to the fact of lawsuits and that, again, I see it as you've got some lawyers out there that'll take the ambulance chasers. It's just like the same thing in football or any sport. They're going to chase so that they can have a chance at putting their name in the spotlight in that. But the firm that has taken this case, you said, they have case history behind them.
Right.
They picked it up for the NHL. Now they're picking it up for these players. So I don't think this is a case where these guys are trying to chase anything. But I do think it's a case where the situation really, really has to be taken a look at in terms of overall sport. Professional sport is where everybody strives to be.
Right.
No question about it.
That's the gold standard.
And it's going to trickle down into the collegiate sports because these folks are playing just as hard. They still have that man-up mentality or woman-up mentality, and they want to continue to play to stay in school and receive that scholarship, whatever it is. So even though they have medical care, some of these folks are in the same situation. They're doing what they can to maintain.
The difference is, at the collegiate level, say what you will, parents will step in. And believe me, I know, because when we were recruiting at Auburn, we had plenty of parents come in. They weren't just the wealthy middle-class parents. These were parents who struggled to get their kids into college, who are now the upper 1% socioeconomic. They're there, and they ask some very serious questions about their kids. One of the things that I think is important is this. Let's take a look at what's going on in the NBA. The NBA, Serge Ibaka, they didn't play him for 2 games, 2 crucial games. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma City didn't. And he comes back, and they make sense of it all. Well, last night's game is out of hand, and this is one of the things that I respect Greg Popovich about for San Antonio Spurs. For the fourth quarter, he just sat down his stars. Mm-hmm. And at the post-game press conference, they questioned him about it. They said, well, why did you do it? He looked at me and just said, Thursday. So why should he risk them being out there and getting injured when it was out of hand, out of control anyway? He's looking ahead to Thursday. I'm thinking that some of these coaches, some of these doctors, some of these people that are avaricious are pretty much dinosaurs. And the kinds of things that Dr. Cromartie was talking about where, oh, by golly, we played and don't drink water and things like that, that's really Neanderthal. But that was a mentality that was around in the late 1960s and even through the 70s. So we're faced with this situation, and again, we're out of time, and I'm sorry. I want to thank Dr. Cromartie and Dr. Foley. Keep an eye on this issue, and keep sending in your suggestions. This suggestion, by the way, came from someone who sent us a suggestion on what to cover. Send it to sportstalk@usssa.edu. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next Wednesday from the United States Sports Academy. This is Dr. Arthur Ogden signing off for Sports Talk.